Welcome to Newshour. Tensions between India and Pakistan have entered a dangerous new phase. Shots were fired along the de facto border for a fourth night, and India's Defence Minister has briefed Prime Minister Modi on security readiness. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Air Force conducts patrols near the frontier. Both Washington and London are urging restraint, while Beijing offers diplomatic backing to Islamabad and calls for a fair investigation into the Pahalgam attack. Water rights are now also in focus as Pakistan refuses renegotiation on the Indus Water Treaty. Fears are mounting that the standoff could spiral into a wider conflict.
The April 22 attack in India's Jammu and Kashmir territory was the deadliest on civilians in nearly 2 decades in the country. But the area has long been a source of tension between India and Pakistan. They both claim the Himalayan region, and it has been the site of multiple wars, insurgencies and diplomatic standoffs. Here's a look at some of the causes.
When India takes her place as a free and independent dominion in the British...
Colonial India was partitioned into 2 states at the end of British rule in 1947, mainly Hindu India and mostly Muslim Pakistan. Between Pakistan's northeast and India's northern tip is Kashmir.
Pakistan's argument has always been that because there were Muslim majority, especially in the Kashmir Valley, therefore this territory should have naturally come to Pakistan.
That's Ayesha Siddiqui, a war studies senior fellow at London's King's College. She said India's claim of Kashmir is also ideological.
The Congress government, Indian Congress government, was secular. And their argument was that giving this territory to Pakistan on the basis of religious identity would mean that, that would challenge India's existence as a secular state, which could have both Muslims and Hindus living together.
In the end, the region was divided up. India had the Kashmir Valley, Ladakh and Jammu, which was given semi-autonomous status. Islamic Pakistan controls Azad Kashmir or Free Kashmir and the northern areas. In addition, China runs Aksai Chin. Kashmir has been scarred by multiple conflicts over the years, including 3 full-blown wars between India and Pakistan. In 1989, Muslim separatists in Kashmir began an insurgency against what they saw as heavy-handed rule by India. India poured troops into the region, and tens of thousands of people have since been killed. India has repeatedly accused Pakistan of arming and training militants. Pakistan denies those claims, saying it offers only moral and diplomatic support. Kashmir Resistance, also known as the Resistance Front, has claimed responsibility for the April 22 attack. In 2019, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government revoked Kashmir's semi-autonomous status and reorganized the state's administrative territories. Officials said the move would better integrate the region with the rest of the country. Pakistan strongly objected, downgrading diplomatic ties with India. But Indian officials say there have since been fewer large-scale attacks and an increase in tourist arrivals, though targeted killings of civilians and security forces continue to be reported. Siddiqui expressed concern over the renewed tensions between the 2 nuclear states.
What Kashmiris are very tired of is repression and state control on both sides. They want to live with dignity without fear and without presence of militaries on both sides.
After the April attack at the popular tourist site, crowds took to the streets. Among them, Mukhra Javed.
We just want to say that terrorism doesn't have a particular religion, and we as common Kashmiris stand for peace and will always stand for peace.
This doesn't represent Kashmir, she added. It doesn't represent us.
OK, let's now get the latest developments from our teams on the ground. We'll go to India first, and A News's Rebecca Bundan sent this report earlier from Mumbai.
Indian authorities have demolished several homes belonging to suspected militants in the Kashmir region as they continue to search for suspects. Hundreds of people have also been detained for questioning following last week's deadly attack, which targeted civilians. India is blaming Pakistan for backing terrorists behind these killings. Islamabad denies any involvement and it's calling for a neutral probe. There's a lot of speculation about how India might respond next and whether it might launch a military strike on Pakistan. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a meeting with his defence minister today in New Delhi. India's also been conducting military drills, including testing long-range missiles. But so far, New Delhi's response has largely been diplomatic, including cancelling visas of Pakistani nationals in India and suspending an important water treaty. But with both sides being nuclear armed, there's a lot of concern about any potential further escalation. The US is calling on the two sides to come up with a responsible solution, and China has also urged India and Pakistan to exercise restraint. Rebecca Bunden for A News, Mumbai.
OK, let's go over to Pakistan now and hear from A News's Hira Mustafa, who was reporting earlier from Islamabad.
About 80% of the water used by farmers in Pakistan comes from the Indus Basin. So it's a critical resource for the entire industry and the food supply within the country. This water sharing treaty has been in effect since 1960, so it has weathered many conflicts. But there is real concern this could be a turning point. Even with the suspension, experts say water supplies won't be cut off overnight. It would take many years to reroute the water with the building of new dams and canals. But the impact would be far-reaching. In response to India's revocation of the Indus Water Treaty, Pakistan has closed its airspace to Indian airlines and suspended all forms of bilateral trade. Islamabad is also seeking an impartial investigation by the United Nations into the reported killings by Indian-administered Kashmir. Pakistan's defense minister has warned that any cross-border strike by India will trigger a strong military response. He also noted that the situation may become clearer in the coming days as regional powers including China, the United States, Turkey and the United Kingdom are working to de-escalate the tensions between the two countries. Pakistani officials have rejected India's allegations of Islamabad's involvement in the recent terror attack in Indian-administered Kashmir as false and baseless. Islamabad has called on New Delhi to present credible evidence, if any exists, and has expressed a willingness to support and initiate a thorough investigation. Pakistani officials argue that in the absence of evidence, India should refrain from using such rhetoric and avoid blaming Pakistan for its internal security shortcomings. The incident has escalated tensions between the two nuclear-armed neighbors, with both sides on high security alert. Experts fear that if regional powers fail to intervene, the volatile situation in the disputed region of Kashmir could escalate from a minor cross-border incident into a broader conflict in South Asia. Hira Mustafa for A News, Islamabad.
OK, let's take a look in more detail now at some of the skirmishes along the border.
The town of Pahalgam has begun to return to normal following last week's deadly attack on tourists in Kashmir. But India said on Monday it had responded to unprovoked small arms firing from Pakistan along the de facto border for the fourth consecutive night. The Pakistani military did not respond to a request for comment. After the April 22 attack that killed 26 tourists, India has identified 2 of the 3 suspected militants as Pakistani. Security officials said survivors have said the militants targeted Hindus before shooting them at close range.
Pakistan officially demands.
Islamabad has denied any role and called for a neutral probe. The nuclear-armed nations have unleashed a raft of measures against each other in response. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Qiakun said on Monday China, a key player in the region, hoped both countries will exercise restraint.
China welcomes all measures conducive to cooling down the current situation and supports an impartial investigation as soon as possible. As a common neighbour of both India and Pakistan, China hopes that India and Pakistan will exercise restraint and meet each other halfway. We should properly handle relevant differences through dialogue and consultation and jointly safeguard regional peace and stability.
The attack has triggered outrage and grief in Hindu-majority India. There have been calls for action against Islamic Pakistan, who New Delhi accuses of funding and encouraging terrorism in Kashmir. Both nations claim the region and have fought 2 wars over the area. India's defence forces have conducted several military exercises across the country since the attack. Some of these are routine preparedness drills, a defence official said. Security forces have detained 500 people for questioning and searched nearly 1,000 houses and forests hunting for militants in Indian Kashmir, a local police official told Reuters. Protests have continued across India as political leaders have called for caution to ensure the innocent are not harmed in the government's actions against terrorism. Kashmir Resistance, also known as the Resistance Front, unequivocally denied involvement in last week's attack in a post on X after an initial message claimed responsibility.
Well, that is all we have time for on tonight's edition of Newshour. Thank you very much for watching, and from all of us here in Baku, a very good evening.